Good morning. Welcome back to the Simply Stated channel. I'm Joyce. I'm so glad you're here. Have you ever tried to explain something so obvious, like the sun is shining, to someone only to have them to continue to deny it? Well, maybe it's not their eyes that are the problem. Maybe it's their heart. In John 9, Jesus heals a man that had been born blind. But the real twist of the story isn't the miracle that Jesus performed, but the mere fact. It's how people respond to the miracle. The man who receives physical sight actually gains spiritual insight. But the Pharisees, those who claim to know God, who claim to see clearly, are exposed as being spiritually blind. This passage challenges us with a sobering truth. It's possible to have perfect physical vision and still be blind. The question isn't just, can you see, but what do you do with the light that you have been given? So join us now. We're going to be reading John 9, and we're actually going to start back one verse back, 25, and we're going to go through the entire chapter. Follow along with me. He replied, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." Then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He said, "I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You're this fellow's disciple? We're disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." The man answered, "Now that's remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly man who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who is he, sir?" the man asked. "Tell me so I may believe in him." Jesus said, "You've now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you." The man said, "Lord, I believed," and he worshiped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, "What? Are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains." You know, the man in verse 25 has told them, "I was blind, but now I see." And yet, those Pharisees keep on digging. They keep wanting to go deeper and deeper with man. And what they're trying to do is they're not trying to get at the truth. They're trying to pull out a flaw, pull that thread that will make it so much easier for them to prosecute Jesus. You know, repetition won't produce faith when the heart is closed. We need to ask ourselves, am I seeking truth? Am I looking for the truth in answers? Or am I just looking to argue? You know, there is a saying, the problem with the heart is the heart of the problem. And the problem is these Pharisees, their hearts were hard. They would not let the truth in. But here's the bold truth that comes from a man who is blind, a man who has not been able to entertain all the things that surround him until just recently when his eyes were open. There is a bold truth that comes from this gentleman, and he responds. He first says, "Why do you want to hear this again?" And he sarcastically says, "Do you want to become his disciple too?" He goes on to use logic and understanding. He refers them back. God does not listen to sinners. God is open to the man who is godly. And historically, no one has ever heard of a man being blind from birth being given his sight. So his conclusion is, if he were not from God, the healer, the one he has called prophet, if he were not from God, he could not do this. We're going to see in the following verses that this man's testimony is bold as he proclaims Jesus, and yet it will cost him everything. It did not stop him from testifying, though. The Pharisees hurl back insults at him, tell them that he was a sinner from birth, and how dare he lecture them. They are so defensive right now, but they have a plan. They're going to shut this man down. He is not going to have any influence in the synagogue. And they literally expel him from the synagogue. You have to understand the implications of being expelled from the synagogue. This was the entire culture in the Jewish culture. This man's means of being able to sustain himself without the culture behind him will cost. In certain areas, you couldn't buy or sell unless you were found right in the synagogue. You were known as the outcast. You were shunned, and people did not do business with you. And this is the cost this man will pay. Yet he boldly proclaims. The application for us today is our own faith grows when we testify, even though it may cost us. But you know what is so beautiful? Jesus has heard that this man has been put out of the synagogue and he is now an outcast. Jesus didn't just go on his way. Jesus goes back to the man today. When we stand and we give our bold testimony of Jesus as our Savior and his effect on our life and our walk, Jesus will always be there with us. He won't walk away. He doesn't leave us alone. Beautifully, the man asks, because remember, he didn't see Jesus after he washed his eyes. Jesus put mud on his eyes. He walked to the pool of Siloam. When he took the mud off of his eyes, Jesus wasn't there, but he had his sight. So he didn't know previously that this man who had given him his sight for the first time in his life was Jesus, his Savior in the flesh. And when Jesus proclaims himself, the man doesn't just say thank you. The man worships Jesus. So many things in our life happen to us. And we see good fortune, we see blessings around our family. Do we take the time to look back who orchestrated those entire events and worship our Jesus? Physical things around us, just like the blind man who can now see physically. Physical things around us changing. And when we worship Jesus, our spiritual vision intensifies. We have a progression from the physical things that we witness around us, just like that gentleman, to the spiritual insight. Ultimate healing isn't just physical. The ultimate healing is Jesus giving us spiritual clarity. It's called 2020 vision. It's the ability to recognize and believe in the Son of God, Jesus. True worship comes after we're spiritually awakened, after our spiritual blinders have been removed and we see clearly, deep understanding. There's some Pharisees in the crowd with Jesus, and they hear his conversation. He says he's come to judge the world. so that the blind will see and those who see will become blind. What he's doing is he's declaring a dividing line. Those who admit their blindness can be healed. Those who claim to see spiritually remain blind. The Pharisees' guilt in all this remains and revolves around their self-righteousness and their arrogance. You see, spiritual blindness isn't about lacking information. It's about rejecting revelation. There's a beautiful passage in 1 Corinthians, I think it's 1:27, and it says, "But God shows the foolish things," and in some translations it says the base, "of the world to confound kings." God took a simple man, gave him his sight. God reveals himself to those who are humble and know that they are blind without him. Our humility opens our eyes. Our arrogance will blind us. The conflict will be spiritual blindness versus spiritual sight, deep insight, deep revelation. There is the danger of religious pride, and we need to check ourselves every time we go to the Lord in prayer and we ask for his revelation. We have to do this with humility and awe. Jesus is the light of the world, and in order to receive his light, we have to admit our blindness. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this has helped you. Please like and subscribe so we can get the word out, and I will see you guys later. Love ya. Bye-bye.